going to talk about an excellent defensive back. It's just not going to be the one that I think you might think. Good morning to you. Good Tuesday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into hockey and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates that I hope you'll take the time to check out. I could talk about Minkah Fitzpatrick, the long takeaway drought and everything else here. Nope, not today. I could talk about Joey Porter Jr., who had another terrific showing, including a big tackle for a loss. He's a little bit confusing in that regard. Sometimes he looks like he doesn't want it, and other times he looks like he's really hungry for it. Can't really figure that out. Doesn't matter. Not him. I could, and this is probably who you were thinking, talk about Beanie Bishop, who had two picks of Aaron Rodgers, no less, almost returned one of them for a touchdown. Rodgers himself called that the deciding factor in the game, and I'm still not going to be on Beanie. Not yet, anyway. Beanie's got his day coming, like probably a little closer to when Cam Sutton's going to come off the suspension and there's going to be a decision that has to be made and whatever else. I am all about Deshaun Elliott today. How did Omar Khan and his staff find this guy in free agency at this price? 2 years at $6 million. A 27-year-old free agent. 2 years at $6 million. And all he's done, although, man, I'm a little reluctant to try to condense this to statistics, but I'm going to read them to you anyway. In 7 games, he's got 51 tackles. That puts him on a career best pace because it'll obviously put him over 100. His career best was in 2022 with the Lions at 96. He's also had a forced fumble, an interception, 3 passes defensed, and none of it really tells you what all he's done because he's been a force up front. He's been a little bit of a wild card, kind of the stuff that Minkah used to do whenever Minkah was asked to go up there. I don't want Minkah up there on a regular basis. I think there are circumstances where it applies, but not often. But you do need somebody. And it's been Elliott, and he has been superlative at his job. Game in, game out. And in doing so, he's probably had as much or even more of a calming influence on that entire secondary that allowed everybody to kind of get their bearings with the other significant offseason acquisition of Dante Jackson. Now, I'm going to rewind you here back to training camp when all of us, myself included, were talking about the secondary as an area of concern. I don't think anybody thought it was going to stink or whatever, but you never know how a group's going to come together. Even a top-tier talent like Porter, you can say what you want about how terrific he was as a rookie, but as we've seen with Broderick Jones this year at a wholly different position, the sophomore slump thing is real. But what's happened instead, and these guys will tell you this, they've become really tight, this group has. And there's no split between corners and safeties. It's all like one big family. They push each other. They set goals, not just for themselves, but for each other. As Beanie was describing what they have in their secondary room, a chart of who gets picks, how many they get, did they take it to the house, did they not? If you get a pick and you don't take it to the house, you got to pay a fine. At least that's how I understood it. Listen, DBs talk real fast, okay? There's not many who don't. They're always the noisiest bunch in the room. But Elliott he's more in the Minkah class of personalities. He's got that adult in the room kind of feel to him. Really bright, really engaging, and befitting what a safety does, really aware of everything that's around him, on and off the field. And listen, I know you don't get awards for being this or that through 7 games of a season. And I also understand that it would be all out idiotic for me to suggest that Elliott's been the best player on that side of the ball when TJ Watt also exists on that side of the ball. But there's no way that this team has found a more pleasant surprise on either side of the ball. And yes, that includes Beanie, who struggled a lot in the early going, understandably, rookie, undrafted free agent, because Elliott's been there from day one. And actually, it precedes that because he was this good in camp and preseason and everywhere else. You know, we spend a lot of time, me and you and everybody else who follows this football team, criticizing and expressing worries about this or that and what about that guy and how do they replace him, and sometimes you can miss the stuff that pops up right in your face that's a huge positive, and there isn't a bigger one this season than Deshaun Elliott. When we come back, J1Q.
This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by our good friends at Mike's Beer Bar. They're located on Federal Street, directly across from PNC Park. Mike has more than 500 beers on tap, including from more than 50 local breweries. Stop in and say hello. Tell Mike we sent you. Mike's Beer Bar.
Today's J1Q comes from Jake, and accidentally continuing our theme for the day, Jake says, DK, special teams have been a big contributor to this team all season. Better than expected punting out of a replacement in Corliss Waitman. Calvin Austin's been solid as a punt returner. Chris Boswell, 19 of 20 on field goals. All those monsters on the block unit. My question is, are the Steelers also getting as much as they can on kickoffs? I swear it feels like they consistently put the ball in play and have such a great coverage unit that opponents are routinely starting at the 20. Is this another facet of the game where the Steelers are shining, or just a chance observation on my part? No, it's not a chance observation. It's accurate, Jake. But I'm going to take your question, as generous as it was and appropriately generous to the special teams, which just can't be sung about enough these days. And that, by the way, was something that was apparent even in the preseason was going to be the case. The only thing that was kind of holding them back, you might recall, were a lot of penalties, but those have been cleaned up. I mean, you're not seeing flags on coverages or returns. You know what else you're not seeing on coverages and returns, though? And this is going to dump all over your actual question. Anything. Like, remember how this was the big deal over the summer? It's going to be the most radical thing you've seen. Football, the way it's never looked before. And, okay, for about 4 seconds, it looks different, meaning in the time it takes the kicker to raise his right arm, step up into the football, and boot it into the air so that everybody can move. And that's it. I have seen almost nothing out of these new rules that makes me think, wow, yeah, man, the game has changed forever. It doesn't look like it's changed at all. Have you seen anywhere in the NFL returns that look like, wow, that wouldn't have happened before? That wouldn't have happened under those old rules. Have you seen anything that makes you think that this was done for any other reason than, the actual reason? I mean, I don't see people getting hurt. I don't see people colliding with each other at 100 miles an hour. That's good, but I don't see things that are exciting either. The kickoffs still mostly go into the end zone. They get downed, and when they get returned, there's like 500 guys, it feels like, in one part of the field waiting for you. There's not really much room. And it kind of stands to reason. Think about it. All those guys are already piled into that end. You're not going to have some, super great downfield block where you take a defender all the way out of the equation before they can even get going. You don't see any of that. So as much as I want to pile on to the praise for the special teams, I don't know that the Steelers are any better or worse at this than anybody else, because I'm not seeing much of a distinction, to be honest with you. I appreciate the question. I really appreciate the shout out to the special teams. These guys are proud of what they're doing. I can't stress that enough. In my interactions with them the other night, these guys, it's the way they're talking about the special teams, the third phase of football. It's as if they're the first or the second phase. And when you hear other guys on the team making sure to include the special teams on every reference and saying all three phases, that's something that TJ Watt does habitually, but it's now everybody doing it. That's really, really cool. I appreciate everyone who listens to Daily Shot of Steelers. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.